Because it's about these elderly gentlemen in their twilight years, you could think it's depressing, but it's not. They've found this kind of second wind, and they're kind of loving their lives together and this moment. And I think that's what's uplifting about it.
Last of the Summer Wine truly showed that in a world where old people were expected to disappear or be the butt of jokes, this was the antithesis. A call to arms for the Silver Surfers.
Summer Wine gives this positive view of old age, which is that no matter how old you are, you can still fancy somebody. You can still enjoy sliding down the hill on a go-kart.
Do you know what? I'm doing exactly what they did now. People watched Summer Wine and said, I think we're going to have some of that when we retire.
I'm finding this for myself now, that the older you get, the more playful you get. Once you are past bringing up of children and achieving whatever it is you want to in your career, the sense of freedom is extraordinary. It's quite heady.
These acutely observed characters, enjoying life each day as it comes, all sprang from the imagination of Roy Clarke.
Roy Clarke, who wrote Last of the Summer Wine, was one of the nicest, quietest, cerebral people I'd ever met. He has written in total over 500 episodes of British comedy.
Yes, as well as Summer Wine, Roy Clarke is also responsible for the Ronnie Barker favourite, Open All Hours. And its follow-on, still Open All Hours, starring David Jason. And 90s smash hit sitcom Keeping Up Appearances was also written by Roy.
He is modest. He always says it's about the on-screen talent. It isn't. The on-screen talent are only going to be as good as the words that he writes.
Having written the successful drama The Misfit for ITV, in 1972, BBC producer Duncan Wood invited Roy Clarke to write a sitcom for them. But Roy was less than enthusiastic, as he explains in this never-before-broadcast interview.
I went in to see him and he said, what we want is something for three old men. And I couldn't believe this. I was 40 at the time. The last thing I was thinking about was writing about old men. And I was on the point of having to turn this down. I played around with it for about a fortnight. It was only when it sort of dawned that if they were all free and easy, no commitments family or work-wise, if they were being able to wander about everywhere, then they were in exactly the same position as adolescents at the other end of the age scale. And the minute I saw them as kids, if you like, it clicked and I was away. And that's Summer Wine. That's the secret of Summer Wine, they're children.
Now Roy Clarke was inspired to create an unlikely trinity. Compo, a feckless charmer. His polar opposite, Blamire, a pompous windbag. And the glue that holds these two together, former lino salesman, Clegg.
He's the voice of the writer, Roy Clarke, in many respects. He's the voice of reason, but at the same time philosophical, quirky, a bit offbeat sometimes.
Roy Clarke had written Cleggy with Peter Sallis in mind. That was the only person he had in his mind that he definitely wanted. It was written for Peter Sallis.
He was an actor's actor. He never stopped. And he was funny, and he was charming, and he was, I think, lovable to most people.
The part of militaristic Cyril Blamire was offered to Michael Bates.
Michael Bates, who was quite old school, quite military, I think he'd been an officer of the Gurkhas, and who played, the character Blamire.
And stalwart of the stage and screen, Bill Owen was sent the script to read for Compo.
I was living with him at the time in his flat in Marylebone High Street, and an envelope came through the door, and he opened it, and I think he read the first scene or first couple of scenes. And I always remember him saying to me, "Son, this is pure gold."
But it was almost not to be.
The BBC auditioned Bill Owen, who was actually a Londoner, and straight away, Roy Clarke said no. He's not suitable. He's not suitable for Compo, sort of this out-of-work, lazy, sort of Yorkshire lad. That's not how I see him.
Roy was kind of adamant that no Bill Owen. But the original producer said, just watched this tape which he had of Bill where he played a Yorkshireman. A very dramatic role. There was no comedy in it. And Roy watched it and he said, "That's Compo."
With his cast coming together, Roy Clark made a revolutionary move for sitcom.